The 9th International Seminar of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries OPEC concluded in Vienna, Austria after 2 days of debates on energy transition and crude production capacity. The United Nations denounced as unacceptable the recent U.S. sanctions against the Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese, warning they set a dangerous precedent. And Argentine experts are warning of the potential loss of over 430,000 jobs following the national government's announcement of import liberalization. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. Stay with us. The 9th International Seminar of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries OPEC concluded in Vienna, Austria after 2 days of debates on energy transition and crude production capacity. The biennial seminar was held from July 9th to 10th with the participation of over 1,000 ministers representing OPEC countries and allies, as well as oil and gas CEOs, policymakers and analysts. At the event, OPEC's World Oil Outlook 2050 book was launched, containing a wider-spanning analysis estimating an increasing oil demand, with India, the Middle East and Africa among key growth drivers. Across the speeches and interviews, OPEC ministers advocated for an approach to the green transition that still allows investment in hydrocarbons, predicting an equilibrium between renewable and traditional sources of energy. In this context, Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez warned of the targeting of oil exporting countries by means of unilateral sanctions that hinder their production.
Today, we will aggressively to get the issue of funding for the Global South.
OPEC's General Secretary Haitham Al-Ghais reiterated Thursday in Vienna, Austria, that the bloc is strong and will successfully face all challenges as it has done during its 65 years of existence.
OPEC is strong. OPEC has existed for 65 years now. Since its foundation in 1960, we went through many historical challenges, and we are going to face all the challenges. Along with the challenges, we have opportunities. I think the issue of climate change is being discussed in a more pragmatic way compared to the last 3 years. We have more realism, more pragmatism.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Malaysia on Thursday to tackle conflicts in Ukraine, Iran, Syria, in addition to other matters of international concern. On the meeting, the officials agreed on finding peaceful solutions to the tensions between Moscow and Kyiv. Moreover, they debated on restoring contacts that could contribute to the resumption of direct flights between Moscow and Washington. Likewise, both ministers, Lavrov and the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, stated the importance of bilateral cooperation in diplomatic missions. Senior leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan will hold a meeting in Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates, on Thursday to debate on a peace deal after decades of territorial conflict. In this context, Armenian Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev met for the first time after finalizing a draft of a possible peace deal in March 2025. Tensions between both nations have been raised due to their dispute over the Nagorno-Karabakh region since the late 1980s, when Armenia backed the region's separation from Azerbaijan. Following a military campaign in 2023, Azerbaijan managed to recontrol the border area, prompting the Armenian government to normalize bilateral relations. South Korea former President Yoon Suk-yeol has been arrested for a second time as part of the ongoing investigation into his declaration of martial law last year. The arrest happened after the Seoul Central District Court approved a warrant authorizing his detention on Thursday morning, citing concerns he may destroy evidence. This way, Yoon returned to the capital city's detention center, where he spent 52 days earlier in the year before being released in March on technical grounds. The 64-year-old politician is on trial for insurrection after plunging the country into a political crisis when he sought to subvert the civilian government on December 3rd of 2024 by sending armed soldiers to parliament in a bid to prevent lawmakers from voting down his declaration of martial law. And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Israeli regime continues massacring desperate Palestinians who are coming to humanitarian aid stations in search of food. On Thursday morning, genocidal troops killed 22 people, including 10 children and 3 women, while strafing in a food distribution center in Deir al-Balah. Israeli fighters bombed the site where nutritional supplements for children were being distributed, and they also attacked other areas of the Strip, but the number of casualties has not yet been confirmed. The massacres in the Palestinian enclave persist, while resistance fighters and Israeli delegates are attending negotiations in Qatar to secure a ceasefire and the release of hostages. On Thursday, the Israeli army attacked the cities of Khan Yunis and Deir al-Balah in the Gaza Strip, leaving dozens dead and many wounded. According to health authorities, at least 31 Palestinians were killed in the Gaza Strip and 16 more were killed in airstrikes in Deir al-Balah. 10 civilians were martyred and dozens were wounded in Khan Yunis. Authorities reported that at least 7,118 people have been killed and 25,368 people have been wounded by Israel since March 18th. Jordan resumes sending humanitarian aid to the Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip amid negotiations between the Hamas Palestinian Resistance Movement and the Israeli regime. On a letter, the Hashemite Charity Organization of Jordan stated that some 40 trucks carrying food crossed into the Gaza Strip with the collaboration of the Jordanian Armed Forces. The communique from the humanitarian group indicated that the convoy was arranged in conjunction with the United Nations World Food Programme as part of the Jordanian Kingdom's efforts to support the Palestinian cause. The movement detailed that the supplies would be distributed to the affected families in northern Gaza. The United Nations called for the government of the United States to revoke its recent decision to impose sanctions on the Special Rapporteur for the occupied Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese. Through a statement, the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, urged Washington to lift the sanctions and demanded an end to the attacks and threats against officials appointed by the United Nations and the International Criminal Court, ICC, stating that it sets a dangerous precedent. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced on Wednesday the imposition of the measures on Albanese, allegedly due to her efforts to urge the ICC to take action against U.S. and Israeli officials and companies for their ongoing genocide on Gaza. No further details on the sanctions or when they will enter into force have been disclosed. Next, the United Nations Special Rapporteur addressed the U.S. sanctions on Thursday and further denounced the genocide Israel commits on Gaza.
It's my duty to expose the fact that the genocide in Gaza has not stopped because it's a means to an end. is a means that Israel is using to pursue the ethnic cleansing of what remains of Palestine, erasing the Palestinians from what remains of their land. Look, it's very clear what Israel is doing. We can deny, we can hide from the truth, but the truth is under our eyes. This is what I'm saying. I mean, it's people can continue to perform stupidity, and we will be judged harshly. We are already judged harshly from many, especially the younger generations, which make no sense, or no sense of what politics has become.
Since November 2022, at least 500 hostages held by the Allied Democratic Forces armed group have been rescued in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Humanitarian organizations reported that at least 150 recruited fighters were released. Among them were women and children who were provided with medical and psychosocial support by social organizations. The IDF is a terrorist group that operates in Congolese territory and parts of Uganda. The groups had kidnapped and deceived civilians in operations against the civilian population. The United Nations revealed that 4.6 million people in Somalia are experiencing food insecurity. The entity reported that at least 1.8 million Somali children under the age of 5 are suffering from acute malnutrition. Compared to the previous year, food assistance has decreased by 50%, affecting 150 care centers and leaving thousands without access to essential medical care. Families have expressed concern about providing for their children due to financial deficits that exacerbate the country's humanitarian crisis. Following the needs assessment, only 15% of resources were allocated at the national level. We have a second shower break coming up before we invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. Fun shower break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. Argentina's public policy experts are warning of the potential loss of over 430,000 jobs following the national government's announcement of import opening. The Fundar Foundation, an Argentinian organization specialized in the design of public policies for development, recently issued a report warning about the risk to the country's industry due to the lack of foreign trade measures. According to the government, imports guarantee competition and access to higher quality products at lower prices. However, this does not take into consideration the national industry or the consequences that it entails. The report states that this would result in a 2.6% drop in production and a 2.2% drop in the economy, as well as job losses in the public and private sectors. At the opening ceremony of a new Chinese embassy in Managua, the capital of Nicaragua, the two countries strengthened their diplomatic ties during the inauguration ceremony. Nicaraguan authorities emphasized that this relationship is founded on mutual respect, solidarity, and a shared worldview. Chinese Ambassador Sheng Shi emphasized that over 3 years since the restoration of diplomatic relations, cooperation between Managua and Beijing has expanded to vital sectors including trade, health, education, and infrastructure. Meanwhile, Presidential Advisor Laureano Ortega thanked President Xi Jinping for supporting joint projects in various regions of Nicaragua. For the third consecutive year, Ecuador will not be able to cope with the energy crisis expected in the coming months. According to several experts, the lack of investment and maintenance is one of the main problems. Our colleague Gabriela Mena with more.
Pese a que el gobierno ecuatoriano anunció tener un plan para evitar la crisis
Although the
energética,
Ecuadorian government announced it had a plan to avoid the energy crisis, experts affirm that it will not prevent power outages, which in 2024 alone represented a loss of $2 billion. This represented a drop of 1.4% of the gross domestic product for the country's economy, according to the central bank.
La semana pasada, desesperadamente.
Last week, in desperation, a request was made for all the generators to start generating
Generadoras térmicas entren a generar porque estaban desconectadas algunas hidroeléctricas.
because some of them were disconnected due to increased rainfall, so with the first cough we get pneumonia.
Con la primera tos nos da neumonía. Y este es
So this is the best indicator of how weak the energy system is, because it is also obvious that this system has been neglected for decades.
Además, este sistema descuidado por décadas son
700 megawatts are needed at a rate of 300 megas of annual growth. It is evident that we are in a crisis.
a un ritmo de 300 megas de crecimiento anual. Es evidente que estamos en crisis.
Y es que distintas consultoras energéticas y expertos
And different energy consultants and experts highlighted that the main problem is the lack of investment and maintenance of hydroelectric plants, which means that if one of them is in pause, it affects the national supply. In Ecuador, according to the Electricity Regulation and Control Agency, 65.89% of energy comes from hydroelectric sources.
Nunca se sabe. Nunca se sabe lo que
You never know what is going to happen to our country because of the political issue.
político. Nuestro país es bendecido de Dios porque tenemos todo. Tenemos sol, agua, viento, tenemos minerales.
Our country is blessed by God because we have everything: sun, water, oil, people, so the political situation is the one that has the issue faltering. What we definitely need is investment.
Entonces lo que necesitamos definitivamente es inversión.
Otra de las opciones para restablecer la
Another option to restore the country's energy supply is the diversification of electricity generation sources such as wind and thermal power.
térmica.
Porque le hacen decir
Because they make Minister of Energy and Mines of Ecuador say that we don't even need to buy energy from Colombia, when this is false.
Falso.
Pero hay más. El problema energético tiene
But there is
nexos
more.
con los
The energy
beneficios a
problem is linked to
empresas
subsidies to mining
mineras.
companies.
Experto
According to
en
Hidalgo, an energy
sin este
expert,
subsidio,
without this
se
subsidy,
podría
it would be
obtener el
possible to
monto para
obtain the amount to
implementar un
implement adequate
mantenimiento
maintenance for
adecuado
water
de las fuentes
sources.
hídricas.
Tenemos este déficit enorme. Este país se da el lujo a día
We
de
have this enormous deficit, and this country has the luxury today of subsidizing electricity to the large mining companies in the country. This is an aberration. It is an enormous contrast. Today, the large industries are paying 25% more in electricity tariffs, that is 2.2 cents per kilowatt more than the large mining companies, which are enormously profitable in mines.
que las grandes mineras, que son enormemente rentables en minas.
Hay un déficit de 500 megavatios o 1000 megavatios.
There is a deficit of 500 megawatts or 1,000 megawatts that has to be covered, and people also have to collaborate to save energy.
Colaborar, o sea, ahorrar energía, ¿no es cierto?
You even pass by public buildings and the lights are on since the morning.
Están prendida la luz desde la mañana.
Lo que por ahora es un hecho es que Ecuador
What
no
is a
podrá
fact for now is that Ecuador will not be able to solve the future energy crisis due to the deficiency of plans and maintenance of energy generating infrastructures, which during the Rafael Correa government allowed Ecuador to generate a high amount of megawatts for export.
genere una alta cantidad de megavatios para exportación. Gabriela Mena, Telesur Ecuador.
In other informations, in the U.S. state of California, 31 workers were safely rescued earlier Thursday after being trapped for hours due to the collapse of a portion of an industrial tunnel in Wilmington, Los Angeles. The collapse occurred about 9.6 kilometers south of the tunnel's only entrance, trapping 27 construction workers, according to the Los Angeles Fire Department. Following the incident, 4 others went in to save their colleagues but got trapped as well. An hour later, firefighters detailed that the 31 construction workers climbed over a roughly 12 to 15-foot pile of dirt to escape, while authorities informed none sustained visible injuries. On Wednesday, Cardinal Gregorio Chavez of El Salvador asked President Nayib Bukele to share information about the conditions and current situation of the 252 Venezuelan citizens being held in Salvadoran prisons, which are being denounced as concentration camps. Chavez stated so during the presentation with the coordinating team of the 8th Camino de San Oscar Romero pilgrimage. The Catholic authority confirmed that persons deprived of freedom have the constitutional right to communicate with their relatives and the right to legitimate self-defense. However, the Venezuelans kidnapped in an illicit agreement between Washington and El Salvador since March of this year have not been able to be contacted by their families, lawyers, or Salvadoran or Venezuelan human rights organizations. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief, but you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For Telesur English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.